It was around 500 years ago when Galileo turned his telescope up to the sky and realized the stars were in fact just like our sun. The Pope threatened to burn him at the stake unless he renounced his discovery. You know, maybe Trump was once the Pope. President Man-Titties is saying it plainly, and he's saying it out loud.
I love the poorly educated.
And now Trump's ushering in an anti-intellectual movement, which is tragically ironic, to say the least. In fact, as The Atlantic wrote this week, he's ushering in the Dark Ages.
Okay, let's look at what took place just before the Dark Ages happened. In the year 476, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. It was a system that daily life lived off of, and it was very structured. They had scribes, historians, and libraries to keep things documented. Roman officials wrote down everything. Laws, taxes, military movements, even trade records. They even had a postal system to spread news around Europe. It was operating similar to how society operates today. There was law and there was order. But when it collapsed, absolute chaos ensued. The people started looking around going, hold on. Why are we following these laws if there's no government to enforce them?
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
As we speak, Tiny Fingers is threatening colleges and universities with the loss of federal funding if they ignore the exact mission for which they were created. Education, enlightenment, a greater understanding of the world.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values for schools that want federal taxpayer funding.
Instead, we get that douche. The scientific benchmarks of the last 100 years, which have led and inspired America's mark on the world, are being treated by these monkeys as a sideshow, and we're under attack. The National Science Foundation and the National Institutes of Health are being kicked around by these dotards who can barely conjugate a verb, much less have the capability to understand the nuance of scientific research. The mRNA vaccine, for example, took decades to refine and save millions of lives, but only 20 minutes for this worm brain to attack and disable.
COVID vaccine successful in saving millions of lives?
I don't know. We don't have a good surveillance system, unfortunately.
We don't know?
I don't think anybody can say that. If you show me science that says that.
You know, Bobby, you say if I show you, you're applying for the job. I mean, clearly, you should know this. And that is, the scientific community has established that COVID vaccines save millions of lives, and you're casting doubt. That is really problematic.
But he's just the tip of the iceberg.
This woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who compared mask wearing to the Holocaust.
You know, we can look back in a time in history where people were told to wear a gold star, and they were definitely treated like second-class citizens, so much so that they were put in trains and taken to gas chambers.
Climate change, which is undeniable unless you're Dairy Queen, is nonetheless under attack by this junior high druggie dropout.
Not only do we have the D.C. jail, which is the D.C. gulag, but now we have Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police. Gazpacho police.
You want more irony? The very bellwethers, such as the Smithsonian and the Kennedy Center, are being overrun by the monosyllabic grunts of MAGA rather than the tenets of science, history, and free expression.
Our great universities are the envy of the world and a crucial national asset. Look around you, and I urge you to take none of this for granted. When you look back in 50 years, you will want to know that you've done whatever it takes to preserve and strengthen our democracy and bring us ever closer to the founders' timeless ideals.
This morning, President Trump continued his attacks on Harvard University. His latest threat, the president posting on Truth Social that he may take, quote, $3 billion of grant money away from very anti-Semitic Harvard and giving it to trade schools all across the land. In another post, the president slammed the university for not handing over a list of foreign students that he demanded last week, posting, quote, Harvard is very slow in the presentation of these documents, and probably for good reason, but have no fear, the government will, in the end, win. Now, this comes after Harvard sued the Trump administration over the Department of Homeland Security that tried to revoke its ability to enroll international students. A federal judge has temporarily halted that ban.
We give them billions of dollars, which is ridiculous. We do grants, which we're probably not going to be doing much grants anymore to Harvard. I'm not going to have a problem with foreign students, but it shouldn't be 31%. It's too much because we have Americans that want to go there and to other places, and they can't go there because you have 31% foreign. Now, No foreign government contributes money to Harvard. We do.
As you just heard, Harvard University is currently in the crosshairs. As Trump announced this week, the nation's oldest academy of learning will have all its remaining grants canceled because they do not acquiesce to Man-Titty's demand that they arrest students protesting the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Trump is threatening to cut funding, limit international student enrollment, and potentially revoke Harvard's tax-exempt status. As Harvard fights back, you begin to realize this is a full-on frontal assault by MAGA to turn America back into Trump's McCarthyistic vision.
You know, they say a woman's place is in the home, and I suppose as long as she's in the home, she might as well be in the kitchen.
The Atlantic article is dead on. This is a purge that is already strangling free thought and expression in red states by electing people such as this goon in Oklahoma, who's forcing Oklahoma schools to use the Trump Bible and now forcing children to hear Trump's 2020 election conspiracies as fact. Up is down, right is left.
Next school year, Oklahoma teens statewide will have something new in their social studies curriculums, a section on President Trump's first term with a lesson centered on the 2020 election, where students will be asked to, quote, identify discrepancies in 2020 elections. That right there is despite overwhelming evidence that there were no significant irregularities in the 2020 election results.
Libraries are closing. Scientists and academicians in the federal government are being fired from their jobs. Professors are being cowed into silence, and researchers are being warned not to broach forbidden subjects like slavery, the Holocaust, and yes, the 2020 election. The Atlantic points out the entire databases of public health information collected over decades are now at risk of vanishing. Any facts to the contrary are treated in the same manner Trump treats anything that threatens him or he doesn't understand. They're heresy to the almighty fat one.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Shakespeare wrote, what's past is prologue, meaning that the past sets the stage for the present and the future. Civilizations that focus on theocracy and fear have historically destroyed the anchors of civilization, science, art, and the free expression of ideas. Ideas that often fail in the marketplace fail because, well, people are short-sighted. While private companies can do research themselves, the most valuable work that leads to valuable innovations and makes our lives better and longer tend to be a costly gamble. And for this reason, a government can take the initial risk that private firms can't. As the Atlantic article points out, commercial flight, radar, microchips, space flight, advanced prosthetics, lactose-free milk, MRI machines. The list of government-supported research that excelled is practically endless. And even when companies do science on their own, it often takes a backseat to money. After all, ExxonMobil knew climate change was real decades ago. Nevertheless, they used their influence to raise doubts about it because it interfered with their profits.
You know, Obama said the biggest problem we have is global warming. And by the way, it's supposed to be 70 degrees today. It's freezing here. Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming.
Look, you goobers, government is not a business, and replacing government with market parameters to solve problems, it won't work. You can't prevent disease and orchestrate effective policy and keep the public informed and have technological advancements if profit is your main motive.
I'm very rich.
That old saying, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it, is in our face. The question is, who's willing to see it?
Goddamn right.
You're a nasty person.
We're a nation that speaks English.
Back and look, if something like that thing start goggling.
Tariff.
You're an idiot.
Drop your pants.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock.
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.